Welcome to the TFO podcast, where guests get to give their thoughts, feelings, and opinions on a variety of subjects. This podcast is hosted by your very own Stacy Cook, and as always, sponsored by Fool's Guide Life Coaching. Follow me on all social media platforms. So give it up for our guest today. Yeah.
I enjoy teaching and I enjoy coaching. And I think those are pieces that make me feel good, knowing that I hear so many of the kids and I get so much feedback from parents or just telling me that they're glad that somebody's helping inspire their child to do something more. And I think that's where we talk about a good leader is somebody that enables you to be the best that you can be.
I think, just being around you, a lot of your fuel comes from, you're just a passionate guy. I mean, like, you really are just somebody that, that kind of pushes you forward, but now you have all of the other technical pieces as well. So you take that passion and add the other things, and it really has worked out for you.
My biggest and best investment on anything looking back on it is my self-development.
Yeah.
My ability to say, what do I need to do to better myself? You can take as many classes as you want and even the 360s or looking at how can I, what are my strengths and weaknesses, but am I developing myself? Just because I know who I am doesn't mean that I can't improve.
Right.
And I think that was the biggest thing that I started to look at and saying, I do like this, but I need to personally improve. And if you'll never stop improving yourself. You'll never stop reading and wanting to develop yourself. And I think that's the piece that helped me to realize that even when I'm 60, 70, I'll probably still be reading some books.
Oh, for sure, right. So one of the things is that you develop yourself to a spot where you can help other people, right? So I think you and I, as we have people come into our offices, what seems like weekly, to ask about, hey, can you help me with my resume or with my, help me with my interview skills? And I have a pretty good long list of people that I've helped to get jobs, and I'm sure you're right there. Right?
Yeah. I talked to somebody yesterday in the parking lot. I was glad that he was here, and I think that we don't think about it when we do that. It's obviously, again, are you enabling somebody to be their best? And that's really what you're doing, right? When you give them the advice that you do, when you help them edit their resume because they have the wrong fonts or they're probably telling a story instead of some bullet points, things that you just already know, and giving them the words that they probably should say. Hey, they're looking for teamwork or working on developments and looking at how you can improve something. Give those key items or tell them this part of what you do. And we as now a good captive audience, we're obviously wanting to help our own business get the best teams as well too. And so I think those are things that we don't even think about anymore. Like when you have developed your skills so much so that it becomes almost like a muscle memory.
Yeah.
Then you probably would reverse back and say, hey, take 10 years back and look at yourself now. I bet you wouldn't even think that you're at where you're at.
Exactly.
And you have realized that you have sharpened your skill set so much so that it becomes just second nature.
Yeah, and you can look back at these folks and say, I remember when I was just starting.
Oh yeah.
I remember when I just got here and where I was. I probably wasn't very good at these things either. And maybe somebody helped you or maybe somebody helped me, and then we can pass that along to other folks. So
I agree. I think those are things that I look back on I know that it's been a challenge me looking back so many years back and say, oh, you could do this back then. Part of when you share your story, most people will want to hear a story that they can relate to. And when I tell my stories to the kids about, hey, I did this and this happened to me at school, or hey, or this is how I got in trouble, and or this is what happened to me when I got put in this position, and I think if they can relate to it, they'll listen to you. And so a lot of times those kids relate to me because I was in trouble. I did get put into juvenile programs. I did have to be put on probation. I got in trouble. And they relate with that. And so when they relate with that portion of their lives, they connect. And when we think about somebody that you're coaching or you're mentoring, or hey, I got hired, I was driving a fork truck, or hey, I was sweeping the floor and I went to school part-time, or this is how I went back to college part-time and did this. That's what helps people inspire, because sometimes, you know, when I think about this, just coming into work and doing your job and you're getting up and you're going over and you're finishing this and you're knocking out 10 things on the checklist. A lot of times you could just be doing your job and you don't realize that you're inspiring other people.
Somebody's watching.
Yeah.
How well you do that job and how thorough you are.
And then they're like, hey, what's he doing? Or, oh my gosh, I think I want something like that. And sometimes it's even just a clothes you're wearing. Like they're like, where did you get that coat from? Or, hey, I wanted to get them that. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, where did you get those shoes? I'm like, oh, my wife bought them or something. I don't really know. But I mean, sometimes people are more observant than what you think you are. And sometimes you think you're just living your life. You think you're just doing your day-to-day things, and you don't even realize that you are inspiring other people to be better. And that's all qualities of a good leader.
Yeah, so you set the bar for yourself every time you wake up and leave the house, right?
Yeah.
If somebody sees you do something that they didn't think you would do that to a negative, then they're going to say, oh, Santos, he's this guy, right? So we're always trying to hold ourselves to our own standards, right? Try to be the best versions of ourselves.
As I've gotten more in age, if you want to say, I've come into more self-reflection of the reality that I know that there'll be a day that I'll no longer be here, that you'll no longer be here. I think the more that I get closer to that point in my life, I think the less I really am so concerned about what other people tend to look at me and have their opinions. And I think when I was younger, oh, that was such a big thing. You know, that was such a huge part of my life. Like, oh, does that person think like this or that person that? I think the less, maybe that's where they say the older you get, the less you care.
I think it is maturity, right? So, you know, if you think about 10 years ago, if we would look to the parking lot, there was a bunch of beat up trucks, some old cars. Now that we have the younger kids here working, you can see all kinds of newer, better vehicles, because that's where they are in their lives. That's the
It's all about, am I keeping up with the Joneses? Am I this? Do I need to have that? I don't care. And it's not like in a bad way. I really am happy for them. All I'm saying is, if I'm only running my own race, and so if I line up at that race, like, I'm not looking if you're passing me. I'm not looking if you're behind me. I'm only looking at that I'm staying in my lane.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest piece that I have learned throughout now, that many times people will look at you and they may compare themselves to you. But as a leader, you must look at yourself and say, am I staying in my lane? Am I running as fast as I can? Is my time better than it was last year? And that's really the piece that I do look at.
Yeah.
As we get, older, we tend to tell ourselves, oh, am I forgetting things? No, I say I'm getting better. I'm getting wiser. I do a lot of self-affirmations for myself. I give myself a lot of, I'm healthy, am I wealthy, I'm wise. I used to say that so much when I was coming in, so much so that I wasn't wealthy. I probably wasn't the healthiest. I had to lose some more weight. And I obviously wasn't wise because I was stuttering and I had speech issues. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you start telling yourself those things more and more and more, you will believe it. I have a lot of faith in saying the things that are not as if they are. And so I must believe that I will, even though I can't see it all the time. And so now that I have reached it in my mind, I tell myself, okay, so now that I've made it to the top of this mountain, I can see a new mountain that I need to climb. And I want to climb that one.
Yeah, what's next, right?
And so I look at it from that perspective, but it's not about a career, it's more about a personal best of me racing against my own self.
So yeah, you said something I thought was neat, and you do really have a lot of motivational quotes. You post things, you speak through some of those things, and you have really lit a fire under yourself for some of these things. Just by, to your point, speaking it into existence.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought was really interesting, it was you and me and one other person, Bernice, how we were able to really motivate each other and keep each other moving forward, and then even say, we can't even believe, we can't even believe we're here. I think we met on Teams last year, or maybe it was a year before, I can't remember, that we all three jumped on a Teams call and just talked about,
we haven't done that for a while.
talked about, life and what it's done for us, right?
Bernice inspired me, because once I got my 2-year, again, felt like I got into that complacency trap. I didn't know what else to do to go to school, and she started to go to school part-time, and she was helping, I think, raise her grandkids at the time, and working full-time as well too, and I thought, well, she was graduating and got a better job. I remember going to her send-off to St. Louis. This is so many years back, and I thought, I am no way going to sit here and say that this is not going to help me. I said, and I remember asking her like 2 or 3 questions after I congratulated her. I was like, hey, where did you go to school, or where was it, or something to that effect. And that was it. Like, I was like, okay, that is the little match that I needed to light, my fire even further, because I thought if she can do that with all of those things she's doing and still graduate, I think in I can't remember, was it 3.8 or 4.0? I don't know what she said she had graduated in that percentage, and I thought, you can do it. And so again, I wasn't personally looking at that life of her so much, but since we had started the same day, me and her, I had got to the point where I'm thinking, I can do that.
Well, then I remember this guy, his name's Santos, walks into my office and says, you know what, you need to get your 4-year degree. And I did as well. I mean, I think you and Bernice both made me say, okay, now both of these guys went and got their degree. How am I going to just sit here and not get mine? So,
I'm glad that you did. I've had other individuals come up to me in my office and tell me that they went back to school because of me, or that I inspired them because I got this X role or that other role I had before. And it's been a journey. Like, I don't think about it as a lot, or even when somebody comes up to me and tells me, hey, a couple years ago you told me this and this, and I never forgot it. And my wife laughs at it because she's like, when did you say that? I was like, I don't even remember. You sometimes say things in the moment, and I would say 98% of it is probably something that I want to say them do better, something that I want them to do, improve, or maybe some words of wisdom that I would have said to myself when I was that age. And I'm taken back by it because I'm like, that's happened so much with the amount of people that we're running into. And my wife, who's from the Quad Cities, but her family's here, but she's mostly, half of her family, mom and dad, one side of it. She always gives me a hard time because we tend to not be able to go anywhere without me talking to somebody.
I can't hardly imagine. But that's good. I mean, that's your personality, and that gives you an opportunity to have more impact on more people. If you don't talk to people, then you don't get those opportunities.
I remember when I'd come talk to somebody, and if I go back to that person that I was back then, I didn't know what to say, or I would question myself about what I was going to say. Now it's just because I've done it so much, I don't really think about it. Like, it just, like, if I really do care about, like, hey, how was your day?
Oh, right.
Or hey, tell me, are you still doing this or doing that? And then asking a sincere question. I have made friends in Europe and South America and Canada, and throughout our teams, so many different groups and members through our organization that I look back on it, and I still sit here and I'm amazed because, that advice that I got way back when, go back to school, start developing yourself a little more, was the best thing that I could have done.